Now they're giving it another go as part of this effort to continue the domination of the Middle East via these regime changes, which are nothing more than aggressive coup d'etats sold as humanitarian lies. And then on the flip side, you've got the left who are, bought the humanitarian pretext, hook, line and sinker, completely ignorant of the fact that when these rebels do come to power, if they do, they're going to impose a doctrine that will ensure total persecution of women and all minorities in the country. And it's basically going to make Gaddafi look like Nelson Mandela in comparison. And yet all these, liberal humanitarians are graciously applauding it. And again, the globalists will love it because that's how they roll. They like to prop up extremist regimes and install them so they can later have the excuse to overthrow them, just as what we saw in Iran. And again, the likes of the BBC and the mass media will applaud and cheer at the liberation of Libyans while they, like the Egyptians, are now being subjected to, are basically completely enslaved as their country becomes nothing more than an oil fiefdom for the New World Order. And again, Israel this week bombed Gaza, injured dozens and killed children. We don't see any calls for a humanitarian intervention there, do we? The Predator drone strikes that Barack Obama has aggressively increased after he replaced Bush kill 90% innocent people, according to the Brookings Institute. And yet we don't see any humanitarian concern surrounding that situation, do we? So again, complete bluster, complete hypocrisy. Again, another war in the Middle East based on lies. It's about arming and supporting one side in a civil war, has absolutely nothing to do with humanitarianism. I'm going to go to some of your calls now, and the first caller is Mike in New York. Go ahead, Mike. You're on the air.
Yes, hello. I'm an info warrior, and I'm going to contribute to the info war right now. Everybody needs to go to republicsfortheunitedstates.org. You're going to see that before the Civil War, you had the South walk out of Congress. When Lincoln came back, he could not get a quorum together, okay? In 1871, the United States Corporation was created. They were given jurisdiction only in Washington, D.C. I want everybody, please, and you, Paul, please, look at this information, comment on it, and maybe write an article on it. It's very important.
Oh. Okay, thanks for the call. Gator in North Carolina, you're on the air, Gator.
Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
Good, thanks. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, I just want to call and share with you. I'm a veteran of the U.S. Army and the United States Marine Corps, and I just been speaking a lot with sheriffs in the county surrounding the area I live here in North Carolina, and I travel a lot. I'm a member of the media, and I travel and fly extensively, and when they started the Speedos protest at TSA some months ago, and have yet, thank God, to go through a full-body scanner or to receive a pat-down. But I'm constantly in talk with military people and law enforcement of all ranks and sizes all over the country as I go about my business. And a couple of things that brought in some good clarification for me I'd like to share with you and everybody else is, there's a lot of people under the illusion that the military and law enforcement, that there's going to be a mass amount of people that will side with freedom and liberty and truth when push comes to shove. And I just wanted to dispel that illusion. A conversation I had 2 days ago with the second in command at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. I called him in regards to the report of the Marines being sent out to Libya, and I asked him about that, and I asked him from a Universal Code of Military Justice standpoint, which requires Marines to stand down against illegal orders. And I was asking him, how could he, in good conscience, having sworn to defend the Constitution, send troops to Libya, which was obviously an illegal order, being that, Obama, of course, bypassed Congress and went and had a unilateral attack on Libya under the auspices of the United Nations. And Sergeant Major refused at all to even mention the word U.S. Constitution. He refused to engage me in any kind of intelligent conversation. And he just said that, look, I've got a commander-in-chief. I do whatever the commander-in-chief says. I told him he was a traitor and a coward, and he was a domestic enemy of the Constitution by failing to uphold his duties as a Marine and resist the illegal orders. And I just wanted to leave you with that. And I spoke to another recruit just out of basic. I handed him a copy of the Constitution and Bill of Rights, and he said he's never read it in his life. And, of course, they no longer teach the Constitution in any shape, form, or fashion in the military. But I appreciate you giving me time.
Okay, thanks for the call. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's precisely what leads to the disturbing and grisly photos that came out this week of these US kill teams in Afghanistan that just go out, murder kids, and then pose with them as trophies. I mean, what kind of training are they being given that leads to that kind of behavior? And as he said, now we've got to talk of Marines out of Camp Lejeune going out to Libya to support the rebels in the civil war. Again, no authorization by Congress. Ron Paul's pointed that out. And not only that, it will be a direct violation of their own UN resolution, which said no boots on the ground, you know, no occupying forces, even though, as I just explained, the SAS has been there for a month. And now we had this article out of WCTI, Camp Lejeune Marines to Libya to strike at Gaddafi forces. We've seen Camp Lejeune Marines in Iraq and Afghanistan, and now they are joining the fight against Libya. Okay, I thought it was a no-fly zone. Now it's a fight against Libya. Okay, about 2,200 Marines from the 26th Marine Expeditionary Unit will take part in support operations based aboard USS Kearsarge at sea. Those support operations have thus far included airstrikes and one rescue operation. The overall mission is to help end the violence directed at the Libyan people. Okay, that'll be why when the US fighter jet crash landed in that field, that the first thing that the US chopper did was shoot at 6 of the civilians who were trying to, you know, help the pilot. So they're really, really interested in stopping the violence against the Libyan people there. Quote, in Libya right now, they're doing exactly what we need them to do. They are doing what they are told. And right now, that's protecting Libyan people against Gaddafi forces. So again, as the caller said, they're just doing what they're told, despite the fact that it is a complete violation of the Constitution that they swore an oath on to protect and defend. And it's even a violation of their own stupid, ridiculous, pointless UN resolution. Linda in California, you're on the air. Go ahead, Linda.
The reason they're doing this is the economic crisis they've been telling us about. And so the Constitution is no good because an economic crisis is driven by Parkinson law, which is to increase jobs. And a Constitution may work when an economy is really doing well and can afford to enforce it once in a while. And even then it's squeezed out. Unless we know the reasons.
Okay, you've got a bad line there. We'll have to move on. Horskin in Texas, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. The death industry worldwide is not only is Israel bombing Gaza to kill Palestinian babies, continually ignored by our lockstep media, but right here, well over 50% of all black babies conceived in the United States are murdered in the womb last year, as we all know, who listen to Alex Jones. And ageism against the youngest and the oldest among us is the most insipid stench of bigotry in my mind. The unborn are not even recognized for their humanity. They are instead torn to bits, chemically dissolved, or used in some bizarre experiment to supposedly somehow serve the interests of us, the adults. Now, these non-productive consumers, the old and disabled, are nightmarishly discarded like yesterday's newspaper and ending all forms of socialized medicine in the Sotero health scam. And that's right, cost savings from death. It's the common theme throughout the slimy Sotero death scare spasm. And, you know, Kenyan-born Indonesian subject, illegal alien, thus ineligible, so-called president, so-called Barack Obama, i.e. Barra Sotaro, is a stooge for the evil banking cartel of killers that greedily rules our world through the so-called Federal Reserve and the IMF, etc. So I'm just urging people to learn more by visiting ronpaul.org or, of course, here at Infowars.com, lewrockwell.com. And so there's lots of sources of really good information out there, and thanks to you, you're always doing a great job. I really appreciate your professionalism and great ideas, sir, and I'm really happy to be able to share some ideas about this death spasm that we're going through here in this country. We're so angry at supposedly the at Gaddafi or whomever for whatever minimal death that might come from his world. But we have an industry here. We're doing it all day, every day. And in fact, here in Austin, Texas, it's not only the live music capital of the known universe, it's the death capital of Texas. We're the only county, Travis County is the only county that forces taxpayers to pay for other people to have abortions. The only county in Texas where taxpayer funds are stolen to do this horrible act.
Okay, thanks for the call. I've got to go to the break now. We'll be back with more of your calls. Stay tuned.
Do you understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is?
I'm filling in for Alex today. Paul Joseph Watson. In the second half of the broadcast, it will be Mike Adams, the editor of naturalnews.com. And any of your calls that I don't get to, Mike will be taking them in the second half of the show, of course, because we've got Dr. Christopher Busby coming up in the next segment, talk about Fukushima. George in Connecticut, you're on the air. Go ahead, George.
Going to talk to Busby, or is this going to be passed on? Because he was on another radio station and talked about the possibility that there were upwards to 1 million deaths from Chernobyl alone over the decades. And I think he had problems with the translation of the Russian material. That's one of the reasons why the numbers are not fully compiled. But also I think this should be also translated into Japanese if there's anybody out there to help out on that too, so that they're aware of what's going on.
Yeah, that's something that I'm going to ask Busby about, because regarding Chernobyl, of course, the UN figures and the World Health Organization figures, actually there was a UN report in 2005 that claimed that there were no birth defects as a result of Chernobyl in the Ukraine, and the UN and WHO figures have routinely underplayed the cancer deaths as a result of Chernobyl. They say that 200,000 were sickened by Chernobyl and that only 9,000 died of cancer. But as you mentioned, the latest research carried out by the Russian environmental policy, which was published by the New York Academy of Sciences, has all this evidence which has not been translated into English, and it clearly indicates that there have been almost 1 million cancer deaths in the past 25 years as a direct result of Chernobyl. And that's something that I'm going to ask Dr. Busby about directly and get his take on that, because we know that the radiation levels in the surrounding prefectures at Fukushima are basically being covered up by the authorities. Now we've got this leak in Reactor 3 with the plutonium MOX uranium mix, and the crisis is only getting worse. But the Geiger counters and the radiation detectors being used by the EPA are just not going to pick this stuff up. So that's something that we're going to explore further in the next hour. Mohammed in Canada, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hello? Hey.
Yes, go ahead.
You hear me all right?
Yeah, what's on your mind today?
Okay, I'm calling. I'm just talking about, I was just going back to what you're talking about at Libya. I think the media has created the paradigm. They created the discussion, and I think everybody's eating it up, and I think we need to look beyond. They're playing the same game. We just got to look beyond, like, the language they're using, beyond, like, no flies on all this. We can't just take it for what they're giving it to us. We got to look deeper as citizens into what is really going on, if we actually do care about what's going on in our world today.
Well, exactly. Most people initially bought the lie that it was just a no-fly zone. They soon became acquainted with what it really was: 6 constant nights of bombardment. But of course, it's all to protect the protesters that have RPGs, tanks, and fighter jets. They're just protecting the people there. Thanks for the call, Patrick in Kansas. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Hey, Paul. I'm calling and wanting to know about information about the big pharma side of the globalists. And I watched this documentary on.
I'll tell you what, you'd be better off talking to Mike Adams, because he is, of course, the health ranger and the expert on all matters big pharma. So I'm sure if you call back in when Mike is on, you'll be able to discuss that with him. But coming up after the break, we got nuclear and radiation expert Dr. Christopher Busby on the deepening crisis in Fukushima. It's the Alex Jones Show Live. Stay tuned, don't go away.
Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.